Welcome into EMAW Radio on this April 24th. It is a Monday as I continue in off-season mode to just try and bring you a little bit more audio, or if you're watching on the YouTube, visual content while the off-season rolls on. And each day they'll kind of vary and go back and forth. Won't do this every day, but as of now, I'll try and at least get 2 or 3 of these to you every single week. And I got to apologize. I got off to a really terrible start on that because I did it Wednesday and I was like, all right, I'm ready to go. We'll be back at this on Friday. And then I completely overlooked and forgot about the fact that my dog was having surgery on Friday. So that kind of negated any chance of me doing that then, which is why I was like, all right, got to hit it hard coming out of the gates on Monday. We'll be good to go there. And then we'll be back here on Wednesday as well. Also, no need to worry. It's just because she's old, so she gets these weird little spots on her. So she was chewing at some of them, needed to get them taken off. They took some of her teeth out too that didn't need to be there anymore. She's all good. She's laying next to me, got her cone on, pissed off, but she'll be fine. She's doing well. So no worries there. But unfortunately, didn't get to come to you on Friday, but that means I get to come to you on this Monday with a lot of different things to hit on. Obviously, Mondays will be a little bit different. We'll kind of go and I'll take you through some of my thinking for my Monday Thoughts piece that runs every Monday morning. Most of the time, if you're not accustomed to it or if you're not on the site, which you should be, go get signed up at kansasstate.rivals.com. And for less than $9 a month, you can be a member of EMAW Online, where you get all this access to K-State, great stories, great content, a lot of recruiting stuff over the last month coming your way. And that's not going to slow down, even though visits have stopped on campus for a little bit. But there's a lot to get to, even with this offseason going on. And a big part of that is going to be a couple of the things that we hit on here today. But start every Monday with Monday Thoughts, 10 of them. Some of them are true thoughts, others are notes. But either way, I think it's a good way to kind of get you up to speed on everything that's going on with K-State or other things around the sports world. Most of the time, it's strictly K-State focus or stuff that will pertain to K-State. Occasionally, I will shift away from it and throw some different bigger picture things, or just, I'm wearing my Royals sweatshirt right now. If I'm pissed off at the Royals, I'll throw them in there. As frustrating as games were this weekend, they actually won a game, and I can't be overly upset about 4-3 losses and 2-0 losses. Now, I can be upset about how they happened, and giving up 3 straight solo shots to start the 6th inning by Jordan Lyles was not great. Anyways, nobody wants to hear about the Royals right now. That's another time. So let's just dive into it, right, with the number one topic on Monday Thoughts, because this is a big deal, even if it ultimately ends up becoming a nothing burger, because there is a chance, and a really good chance, that that's the case. But Keyontae Johnson entered the NBA draft process yesterday officially. He announced that on his social media channels. And it was a pretty normal and standard, hey, I'm going to the NBA type tweet or announcement, or, because he put it on Instagram as well. It's all pretty normal, talking about, playing basketball, how important it was to him about coming to K-State. And that was, honestly, that's another one of the big things, is this was a strictly thank you to K-State type thing from Keyontae Johnson. That's how much of an impact K-State obviously made on Keyontae Johnson in just 1 year. And at the very end, the last paragraph, he says, "I will be moving on to the next chapter in my life, but I will still need your love, support, and most importantly, your prayers. With that being said, I will be entering my name in the 2023 NBA draft while maintaining my eligibility. My story continues to be written." That is the big deal right there, is that Keyontae Johnson is going to go through the NBA draft process, but he's not doing it like a guy that is dead set on, hey, I'm done with college basketball. That is Keyontae Johnson leaving the door slightly cracked open that he could return to Kansas State next year. And just that thought, number one, should be, again, maybe I can read too much into this, but in some way should probably be an honor to K-State fans and to the community and everything, that Keyontae Johnson had a year that was so impactful at K-State that he is willing to even consider coming back, considering the fact that he is older than most NBA draft entries at this point in time. Like, that's just kind of the way things work now. Um, the way he's set up, like it's tough. Like he needs to be ready and able to go to the NBA draft as soon as possible, really, because um, teams are less likely, I think, to take flyers on guys that are starting to age. Now, Keyontae Johnson's a little bit of a different story because his talent is obviously kind of off the charts compared to some of the other guys you would take flyers on. Like he is a complete player right now. You can look at that and say, Keyontae Johnson could probably give something off the bench occasionally when needed in an NBA game right now, but he is going to go through the NBA draft process. That was expected, but he is going to leave it open to possibly coming back to K-State. Now, what that essentially means is he'll go through the process that guys like Barry Brown or Kamau Stokes did most recently, where they went through, they got feedback, and they came back to K-State like it was no big deal. Keyontae Johnson's a little bit of a different situation because like he's much more likely to have an NBA chance than Barry Brown and Kamau Stokes were when they went through that process. But it's valuable to go get that feedback and to be able to understand kind of where you sit in that point in time. So Keyontae is going to go through and do this. And if he doesn't hear, I guess, what he thinks is important to him, which would probably be a team or two at least that say, all right, if you're here at this point, we're taking you. We really want you, or we got you lined up. We'll be sure to, even if you don't get drafted, like you've got a summer league deal, like a 2-way contract waiting for you with us. That to me is kind of the thing that Keyontae Johnson should probably be looking for, is if he can find somebody similar to what Dean Wade got with the Cavaliers when he came out of school, was a team that was willing to give him a 2-way contract. So Dean Wade started his professional career in Canton playing for the Cavs G League team, but since he was on that 2-way contract, could be called up to the Cavaliers at some point. I don't know enough about NBA contracts. I can't remember the specific number of games that you can cap out at on a 2-way contract in the NBA, but I think you can play like half the season in the NBA on a 2-way deal. So that's probably the thing that you're looking for, because then obviously a lot of these 2-way contract guys do parlay that into a full NBA contract, like Dean Wade has done, where he has become a legitimate rotation guy for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's got a multi-year NBA deal that's paying him millions of dollars. Like, that's the kind of trajectory, and that's the kind of thing that I think Keyontae Johnson is probably looking for and wants to get. Now, if he doesn't get that, and he gets a lot of responses of, man, we really like you, but we've got health concerns, we just don't know, like, if it's going to be a fit right now. We could probably put you on a G League team. I don't think that's what Keyontae Johnson is going through this process looking for. And I think obviously one of the big things that helps is NIL. Now, K-State is not of the level of Kentucky, where they were able to get Oscar Tshiebwe to come back last season because they could guarantee that they would pay him more than basically, I think if Tshiebwe got picked outside of like the top 20, it was more valuable for him to go back to Kentucky last year because they could pay him just as much as like a rookie NBA deal or something with NIL. K-State isn't going to have that full luxury, but there's going to be a lot of big-time NIL opportunities for Keyontae Johnson if he were to return. A lot of things that he would not have to worry about paying for himself. And on top of that, I do think that there is still some value to guys that like playing basketball. It's really fun to be the best at something that you do, you know? So if Keyontae Johnson looks around and goes, okay, well, I don't have the best response right now from these NBA guys, I don't feel confident about what's going on here, then all right, maybe I'll go back to a place where it's just an All-American. I can be the guy this year. Like Keyontae was the guy for a little bit, and this is no disrespect to him, but obviously Marquise Noel just grabbed it and stole it from him. Now, I think people mostly think of those guys on like the same level. But I mean, Marquise is the guy, and then Keyontae was the guy after him, even though they were really close. Keyontae Johnson comes back. He is the undisputed guy of this team next year. And in addition to that, like his 1 year at K-State, it could have ended however it ended. Like people are going to be so thankful for that and always be have the highest of thoughts of Keyontae Johnson for what he did for K-State basketball. But if he comes back for a second year, that ceiling of love and appreciation, it goes even higher than I didn't expect it to be able to go higher, but it would. So I think there's a lot of things that stack up to where you look at it and you go, okay, I go back to a place where I'm comfortable. I continue to get better. I can be the best player on the floor, not just on my team, but probably like if Keyontae came back next year, we're probably talking about him being Big 12 preseason player of the year. Like that's probably the likelihood of where things go. And he would, again, probably be in consideration then for more national awards that came his way. So there's a lot of things there that open it up. Now, I started to hear about the wavering of Keyontae probably about a week, 2 weeks ago, where there's a few things popping up about, hey, maybe just maybe he's not 100% sold on leaving. He might come back, like that door is going to be open, and now we see that door is officially open. That is a big deal. This is not just I don't think this is just a fallback plan for Keyontae Johnson if he doesn't get what he wants in the NBA. Now, obviously, if he gets what he wants, he should absolutely go get that career clock started, make the money that you can while you can, and there's no doubt in my mind that he would be successful at that level. But this is a decision that is made because I think there are two things. Like, yes, it benefits Keyontae Johnson to be able to come back if he doesn't get the feedback that he likes from the NBA draft process. That's for sure. But I think that there's also a part of this where Keyontae Johnson wants to come back. I mean, that's a guy that feels like he had his college basketball experience robbed from him, I'm sure. And not like it's not even just because of the medical condition that took place while he was at Florida. Like, obviously, that took away 2 seasons for him. But, like, he was also going to feel a little bit screwed in that anyways because he lost – I mean, the COVID season, that's the year that he went down with his condition. But even then, like, to start that, like, that's not a real season. And he finally hit his full potential at K-State this past year. And I think when you go 4 years essentially where at Florida he starts to kind of ascend and then just an awful tragedy happens and it pauses everything and maybe even drops him down a little bit to where it feels like, hey, you got something taken from you that was meant to happen, was meant to be. And he got to enjoy that this season. I think that this is a two-way thing where Keyontae Johnson is wanting the door to be open if he doesn't get the feedback that he wants, but also just know that, like, I think that this is also because he genuinely enjoyed his one season at K-State and would be totally okay if it meant that he had to play a second season at K-State next year. So that's the number one thing to start the day with. Very, very significant, even if ultimately he does end up going through the NBA draft process, but it does leave some hope there for anybody that was maybe thinking to themselves, like, what could happen? What are we going to need to do? It's a significant deal. So just something to keep on the radar. We'll see how the process plays out. Let me look real quick. See when the deadline is. It's sometime in June. Okay, so yesterday was the deadline for early entry to get into the NBA draft and go through that process. June 1st is the drop dead date. That is the last day for players to be able to withdraw from the draft and uphold their college eligibility. The NBA draft combine is going to take place next month in Chicago. It takes place over a week, but middle of May in Chicago is when the combine will be. That'll be one of the first steps in kind of telling where this goes. The NBA is very limited in who they invite to the combine. The NFL, even though they limit their invites, it's not to the level of the NBA. Obviously, less guys, less teams, whatever else, but just something to monitor. So we'll see how this process plays out for Keyontae Johnson. But one of the other signs that maybe that there is some stuff up in the air with this is the one position that we haven't really gotten a ton of notes on what K-State's doing in the transfer portal is at that position that Keyontae Johnson played, where it's kind of a 3-4 hybrid. If you look at it, where Johnson can play out on the wing, do everything that you need him to do there, but he can also score inside, in the paint, mid-range stuff like it. K-State has not really looked at that. We know about the guards that they're in on, and I'll hit on those in a second. And there have been some big men floated out there that K-State has looked at. But I think it's kind of telling in some ways that there haven't been just over-the-top gung-ho on going out and finding the quote-unquote Keyontae Johnson replacement. Now, as we know, they're not going to find a guy of Keyontae Johnson's skill set, but they are going to find, hopefully, somebody with comparable skills if they have to go that route. just one of those things that maybe starts to make you think a little bit more about, oh, okay, so maybe that's intentional. Maybe that hasn't happened for a reason, and that's because there's a chance that Keyontae Johnson comes back. And if Keyontae Johnson does come back, that means that the open scholarships that K-State has to use would just be 3. The final note there, Keyontae Johnson would have to apply for a waiver from the NCAA if they haven't even already given him one. He would absolutely get it. No worries about that. The NCAA is the king of bad PR and idiotic decisions. I think that they would be smart enough to realize the absolute hellstorm that would go down for them if they denied Keyontae Johnson a medical waiver to play another season of college basketball. So if he wants to come back, he will be in purple, lavender, white, whatever you want him in next season. If he wants to come back, it's going to happen. So just follow along with Keyontae Johnson's draft process. Here's the way you should feel about it. I shouldn't say how you should feel about it. That's bad of me. Feel however you want to feel about it. This is the way I see it. I want Keyontae Johnson to get the best opportunity out there. And more times than not, I want that opportunity for him to be that an NBA team falls in love with him and is going to give him a great deal, and he's going to spend all of next season on an NBA roster, make NBA money, get that career started, and he doesn't need to come back to K-State. That is what I ultimately hope, because as we know, that's what's best for these players in most of these regards. We have seen this in the last, I don't know, at 5, 6. I mean, it's getting a while now. As I get older, I used to say 5 years, and that was like a lot of time because I'd only been alive for 20 years. Now I've been alive for 25 years, and I say, in the last 5 years, and I realized that doesn't account for like 2 years that I was in college. So I got to go back a little bit further. But in probably the last 7 years, we have seen this, especially on the football side. Oh, this guy shouldn't leave early. This guy should come back to K-State. What we have seen is those guys have left early, and they have then returned. They've gone to the NFL, and even if they weren't drafted or they didn't get the highest pick position or whatever else, it's worked out for them in the most part. I mean, the number one guy that to me stands out there as being one of those guys is Byron Pringle. There's a lot of, Pringle should absolutely come back. He should come back to K-State. He didn't, and the Chiefs took a flyer on him. He spent that first year where he was hurt, and then the next year he was on the roster. Eventually, things worked out. Byron Pringle, to this point now, has made almost $8 million in his NFL career that has spanned, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons in the NFL. That's pretty good, I would say. So he's in a good spot with how that goes. Like, it's worked out for Byron Pringle. Another guy on that list that comes to mind is Elijah Lee, who also ended up playing for the Bears at times. But Elijah Lee, you look at him, he came out and he ends up making a pretty nice career of himself. Not as much as Pringle, but backup linebackers not as important as receivers. Elijah Lee has made almost $5 million in his NFL career now. Now, he's had a much more topsy-turvy path, but he's made it happen. It's worked out for him. He's been in a really good spot. DJ Reed would also fall into that category. DJ Reed's had just a fantastic NFL career to this point. And right now, DJ Reed has already made almost $14 million in the NFL, including almost $11 million this last year with the Jets. This upcoming season and the year after that, he's making $11 million per year. So by the end of this contract with the Jets, DJ Reed is going to have over $35 million from his NFL salaries. And not only that, DJ Reed has turned into legitimately one of the better corners in the NFL. Jets people love DJ Reed this year. And anytime you watch the Jets game, now I'm not sure how many people did because that would be a miserable experience. But if you watch the Jets game, people were talking up DJ Reed left and right. And you can kind of go down the list of these guys that made the right choice to go through and do this. It just made sense for them. Another guy, and this is more on the basketball side of everything. I think you go and you look at how things probably worked out for a guy like Bill Walker. I mean, he's still made millions of dollars in the NBA. He's the one where maybe you say, hey, you could have come back. It would have worked out a little bit better. But I think anytime these guys can go get the job they want and make the money that's going to be really good to them, do it as quick as possible, because in these sports, one little thing could knock you out with an injury or whatever else it may be. Go take advantage of it, get it started early. And that's why I hope that Keyontae Johnson does get that NBA opportunity. But also, if he doesn't hear what he wants to hear, it's good to know that he's got a great landing spot. And it would just so happen that great landing spot for Keyontae Johnson would also be really awesome for K-State to have fall in their lap. It'd be like landing Keyontae Johnson in the transfer portal all over again. It was a major get the first time. It would be an even bigger get the second time if Keyontae Johnson decided to come back to K-State. So just one of those things to keep an eye on as we move forward. I also said the transfer portal, there are some things going on there. Last week, a little bit of a slower week for K-State. The coaches were focused a little bit more on the high school recruiting. They were out at the Elite Youth Basketball League tournament down in Atlanta. All of the coaches were down there. Hopefully by now everybody saw the picture that was tweeted on Friday night of Jerome Tang and Dream Dowling sitting and standing there watching watching games in their K-State baseball jerseys. That was a fun thing to see. And here's my thought on that. Some coaches would not be able to pull off the showing up to recruit in a baseball jersey. It just wouldn't work out. But because these guys are so genuine, and you just know that, like, not only are they great basketball coaches, but they're kind of just goofballs. They can pull it off because it's a genuine them move. It's not like forced. It's not whatever. Like, they pull it off because those are guys that are just wanting to show off K-State, and 1 year have built this love and admiration for this place. So that's significant. While they were down there, they gave an offer to the number 2 overall player in the class of 2025, Cooper Flagg. He put up 52 points in his first game of the EYBL, and probably a pipe dream for K-State. A lot of the thought early on is that Cooper Flagg is likely headed to a place like Duke, but K-State being able to be in this mix and just at least throw their name in the hat and have some time to work with guys like this, like, these are the type of dudes that eventually, if things continue on this track, this staff is going to land. Like, we already know in year one, and I mentioned this because I'll talk about it in a second, they were able to land 3 top 150 players, number 57, number 85, and number 134. Then the very first recruit of their second recruiting class at K-State is the number 35 player overall in 2024. Like, the ascension is continuing for K-State basketball recruiting, and they will eventually get to that point. It's what happened at Baylor. They eventually got to that point where they were able to bring those guys in. So I think that's significant. It's something to take note of. But anyways, for the portal purposes, because they didn't have as much going on with the transfer portal last week, and Aaron Estrada, he did commit to Alabama. I think it was like the day after or the day of that I talked to you guys last week. He ended up committing to Alabama. Not much of a surprise there. He didn't make his visit to K-State. Like, that thing just kind of locked up quickly. So that means K-State's got still their two of the biggest priorities for them out there in the portal right now that they will try and land this week. Number 1 on that list to me now is Tyler Perry, because of the likelihood that it happens. Tyler Perry supposed to start his visit in Manhattan early this week. Wink, wink, probably tonight. Tyler Perry should get that going. I'm 99% sure that Tyler Perry is going to be a Wildcat. Everything that I heard from the second Tyler Perry entered the portal to, the process of, okay, starting to figure out who is who, what teams are involved here. Even when he wasn't on that list of 8 teams, I was being told, hey, Tyler Perry, K-State, it's still on. It's still a thing that's looking likely. So Tyler Perry, I think that decision very easily could come sometime this week. We'll just have to see, maybe while he's on campus still. And then the other big one is Max Asmus is still out there for K-State. And he made his visit to Texas last week. After making his visit to K-State, I think K-State made enough of an impact to make this a real decision for Max Asmus. And like I said, it's just going to come down to how much does NIL play a factor, because if that's the case, then Texas likely has this thing locked up in their favor. But I do think that if this was recruiting even 5 years ago for a transfer, I think K-State probably wins this recruitment because I think that they can sell the success of that position, the staff, just a lot of things that I think would weigh them more heavily than what Texas has. Texas is just going to have the financial backing. Meanwhile, close proximity. They had an equally as good season as K-State last year. So both teams are fairly equal. There's just one little thing that could tip the scale in Texas's favor right now. We'll see if K-State was able to do enough, sell the dream enough to Max Asmus and his family that would make them maybe forego some of that extra NIL money that would likely come out of a place like Texas. But that's the thing that you have to factor in with all of these is just seems like that's you got to be on your heels and toes there. And we'll see how things end up going. Heels and toes. I don't think that's what it is. You got to be on your toes. If you're on your heels and toes, you're just walking normally, or you're being caught flat-footed. That's terrible. Be on your toes and only your toes. So yeah, we'll move on there from that. I mentioned that the 2023 recruiting class for K-State basketball about how all three guys were inside the top 150. Two of them are 4 stars. The one that is not is Caleb Rich, but Wednesday is when Rivals will drop the final 150 of 2023. I don't have any inside information on this whatsoever, but I think Caleb Rich should probably be in consideration for the 4-star territory. He had a great season at East St. Louis, and he is a very talented player. So even though he is rated lower than Day-Day Ames and RJ Jones, I think Caleb Rich probably deserves to be in that same category as them. So be on the lookout for that on Wednesday when the next Rivals 150 comes out, the final Rivals 150 of 2023. We know that the Wildcats are doing great things in that right now. So we'll see how that ends up going down. A couple of other notes to just kind of clean things up on K-State sports this week. The NFL draft obviously starts on Thursday in Kansas City. K-State's going to have 2 guys with a possibility of going in the first round on Thursday. Felix Anyudike-Uzama and Julius Brents will both have their chances to have their names be called. We'll see what ends up happening there. Both Todd McShay from ESPN and Daniel Jeremiah of the NFL Network have both guys graded inside their top 35, gives each of them a chance to be taken in the first round. These guys aren't like dead set first rounders. So this is the kind of scenario where it takes a team that has the need, sees the fit, and loves the player to take them in the first round. But both guys have a chance. And I don't know. I think it seems like it's trending in a direction that at least one of those guys is taken in the first round on Thursday night. So very rarely do I actually care about the NFL draft. It's a long night. It's a terrible experience. My last 2 NFL draft watching experiences have been just the absolute worst. It's been a nightmare with the promotion that we did at the radio station I was at. It was a long night, and I hate the NFL draft. But I will be locked in on this Thursday night to see if any of the Cats are able to go in the first round. So that's something to take note of. Other things to clean up real quick around K-State. K-State baseball continues their hot stretch. The Batcats, they took 2 of 3 from UC Irvine over the weekend. That jumped K-State's RPI 14 spots in the last 7 days because they had the sweep over KU, and then they took 2 of 3 from Irvine. They did lose to Wichita State in their midweek game, and I was pretty down about that because I hate seeing K-State lose to Wichita State in anything. I actually think that's the first thing, baseball, that's the first thing that K-State has lost to Wichita State in this year because the men's and women's basketball teams beat Wichita State. So it was a little tough for me to take that in, but don't worry, that's not as bad of a loss as maybe it seemed at the time. Wichita State is very hot right now. They just took 3 of 4 this weekend from East Carolina, who's a top 10 team in the country, and now Wichita State is tied for the lead in the AAC, which, speaking of being towards the top of the league, K-State is in 3rd place in the Big 12 right now, and they are squarely in the race as it stands at this point in time for Big 12 title contention. Now, the only thing to take note of there is They've played more games than everybody else, so they've had more chances at wins. Also, the schedule is very, very tough finishing out for K-State. It's Texas Tech, it's Oklahoma State, it's TCU, all three teams inside the top 25. But the Batcats playing hot baseball, giving themselves a chance to be on the outside looking in of the NCAA tournament. They return to home Friday to face Texas Tech. They will play one more game tomorrow. That'll be against UC Riverside out in California before they come home. UC Riverside is terrible. Cats have to win that game. They have to avoid these bad losses in the midweek, and that would also include a chance for revenge in Wichita a week from Tuesday. So you best believe I'll be out there. I'll make my way to X Stadium to support the Cats against Wichita State. Another thing to kind of take note of here for anybody that is interested in possibly attending, and if you haven't heard, I'd be surprised if you haven't. Ernie Barrett passed away on Friday. I wrote briefly about it this morning. I'm not sure that there is a person who represents more of what being a K-Stater is all about than what Ernie Barrett was. And he got to live it to the fullest extent of being one of the best basketball players to ever play at K-State, and then to go on and have the administrative career that he had at K-State. And more so than that, like working in an official manner, Ernie Barrett just being Ernie Barrett and still being around the program was significant enough to K-State. Like, the guy just did everything that he could to make K-State a better place, and was a great representation of, I think, what most of us that went to K-State think K-State is all about. So if you're interested, K-State will host Ernie Barrett's Celebration of Life on Thursday at 1 o'clock inside Bramlage Coliseum. That's open to the public. So if anybody on Thursday wants to go celebrate Ernie Barrett's life, you absolutely can at Bramlage, which would probably be a great moment for a lot of people to be able to go there. So those are some of the things to note. Another thing, just to keep you up to speed on it, and this is in the Monday Thoughts piece, and I give my thoughts on it, but there are rule changes coming to college football next year. If you didn't see that last week, one of the most notable is that the clock will not stop after first downs anymore. So when K-State gets a first down with like 2 minutes left in the game against UCF next year, and they're trying to drive down the field and score for the go-ahead touchdown, you're like, why is the clock not stopping? Stop the clock, stop the clock. Like you're yelling at a 13-year-old at a youth basketball game. That's just how it's going to work now. No more stopping the clock after first downs. I don't think it really does a whole lot. It seems like a stupid rule change. If these people really wanted to speed up the game of college football, they would take money out of their pockets and give it back, because that's how you're going to have to do it. It's commercials that kill a bunch of time for you, but whatever. They're not going to do that. So it's A-okay. Closing things out here with one very interesting note from the Big 12's Vice President of Basketball, John Williams. Let me go back and make sure that I attribute to the right spot. So he was on with a guy by the name of Chris Gardner on the Houston Round Ball Review. So Chris Gardner has covered basketball since 1994. He's got a YouTube show, and he had John Williams, the VP of Big 12 Men's Hoops, on with him last week. And there were a couple things they talked about, covered a lot that has to do with the Big 12 and everything that's going on. Obviously, Houston has some interest in that, considering the situation that they're in right now, coming to the Big 12. But one of the notable things that came out of it is that Williams said that the Big 12 is looking at having a preseason tip-off event where teams that only play each other once in conference would match up and play 4 or 5 games to give teams a chance to make up the lost SEC Challenge game, to get another quad 1 or 2 game on their schedule. It would not count toward their conference standings. He said it would likely be in the first week of November, and that it would be at a neutral site. I don't hate this idea by the Big 12. Number one, it's tough to get eyeballs early in the college basketball season, but the one way that you can get people to watch is if it's in the middle of the week and there's no football, no college football, no NFL football, and you have legit matchups on. Like, only people that watched K-State and UTRGV last year were K-State fans. The only people that, go through and they watch Oklahoma take on, Florida A&M or something those are Oklahoma fans. Like that's, and I'm not even sure Oklahoma fans were watching that. I saw that crowd at the Lloyd Noble Center this year. But if you have these big games like the Champions Classic we see with Duke, KU, Michigan State, and Kentucky every year, there's always Gonzaga is always playing a bunch of big ones. Baylor is setting up big games now in the non-con. You can get eyeballs that way to your basketball product even during early football season. So I don't hate the idea because of a couple of other reasons, which is he's absolutely right. Like the Big 12 has had that built-in extra game guarantee where Big 12 SEC Challenge, you're going to get a quality game regardless of who it is, and that is going away. So you've lost the game there, and it does seem like maybe some of these other teams and schools would, on their own volition, go out there and schedule a quality opponent. But that can be tough to do for some teams. To be able to get a quality opponent on your schedule, sometimes there will be dodging or whatever else that takes place. So I like that. It adds another game that you know will be there for some of these teams. Now, if there's only 5 games, that means 10, which means 4 Big 12 teams are on the outs of that. But that's okay. That's totally okay. We don't have to make this everybody gets everything type of deal. Some teams just don't deserve to be there. Like I don't need to see UCF in the Big 12 tip-off event. I probably don't need to see who do I want to be mean to next year. I probably don't need to see Texas Tech there next year. Sorry, don't need to see it. Do I need to see BYU? Probably not next year. Do I need to see Oklahoma State? Probably not next year. Sorry, Mike Boynton, but I don't think you're a good basketball coach. My apologies. So I think it's good for that. Making up that lost SEC Challenge game makes total sense. And also, the other thing that I think is beneficial to this is the neutral site aspect. I know a lot of people wanted to take Brett Yormark for at his word for what he said when he was at the Big 12 tournament this year about he saw no reason to leave Kansas City. Well, that's because the contract's in place for a while still now, and he's not going to ruffle any feathers yet. But don't get me wrong, this is a guy in Brett Yormark that absolutely does seem to want to move the Big 12 tournament if he got the chance. He wants to do bigger events, bigger type deals for the Big 12 outside of Kansas City or this footprint. Like whether that's in Brooklyn with his boys at the Nets at the Barclays Center, whether that's Vegas, which is very exciting, wherever it may be. Brett Yormark is an entertainer that has his eyes set on the highest levels. That's why I think that there would still be that ultimate goal. If he could scratch his itch of playing these early season games at a neutral site outside of the Big 12's regular footprint that makes it kind of a destination for people to get to, that would be the best thing and the best solution to me, where you say, okay, we are going to move these games and play them in a Brooklyn or a Vegas while leaving the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City where it belongs, where it should be, where it's going to get its best support from people that actually care about it. I think that's the biggest benefit to that. Now, very well, that could not be what happens even if this Big 12 tip-off event gets added, but it is definitely something that I would like to see take place, and you get that little trade-off. And as we know, like if you give people that enjoy their basketball an event in a special place, they will go. I mean, we saw a lot of K-State fans on a whim decide to go to New York this year for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. Now, I know that's the NCAA tournament, but if you told me, hey, guess what? You can go to Las Vegas and you'll get all the fun of being around this big eventful place like Vegas. But in addition to that, you're going to get to sit around one day and watch 5 quality Big 12 basketball games. Sign me up. Like people know I love college basketball more than any other college sport. And in all honesty, outside of baseball, like college basketball is number one right there. You sign me up, I'll go sit there and watch it. I love the Big 12 tournament. I love going to the NJCAA tournament in Hutch when I was a kid. You just sit around, watch basketball game after basketball game. It's a beautiful thing. And I'd be down for it. So I think that's the right solution. I like it for that idea. Now, that's a picture-perfect world in my eyes, so that means it's probably not what ultimately Brett Yormark would decide to do with it. But it's something that's interesting to keep on the radar. I don't mind the thought of it. They're gonna have to be careful about scheduling and everything. Because the other thing too is like, if you do it, you can't do it on a weekend. Obviously, you can't do it on a Saturday because of college football. Can't do it on a Sunday because of NFL football. How many people will go out there if you do it on a Friday because college football is on that next day, and the Big 12 is still very much a football conference. So would it make sense to do it on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday? I think that's probably the likely landing spot for it would be Tuesday or Wednesday. That's when you could have people that really want to, hey, we don't have anything. The football games this weekend. It's a lull. People would turn on their TVs and watch that. That to me is the perfect scenario. So we'll see how that ultimately ends up playing out. One other note from what John Williams had to say that I thought was interesting. He was asked about ESPN Plus because obviously with Fox coming in as a TV partner for the Big 12 now, the Big 12 is going to divvy games up between ESPN and Fox. He did say that there will be more games on linear television now. So there will theoretically, and based off what he says at this point, be less ESPN Plus games this upcoming year. Now, I have not looked over the contracts in a long time. That very well could not be true, and he could just be saying that to say that because there is a chance that, hey, contractually there has to be X amount of games on ESPN Plus for Big 12 basketball. But he did say that there will be more games on linear television this year. That should make people happy and excited. Now, what I'm going to say next probably will not make a lot of people happy and excited. He said, we had the Kansas State game on Plus this year, and I couldn't tell the difference. The quality of the game is very good. It just depends on the announcers, but the quality of the TV game, you can't tell a difference. I will agree with him that certain ESPN Plus games, you really can't tell the difference. The only gripe that people have is that they can't get it on their cable provider, or you have to switch apps if you're streaming like YouTube TV. I can't just go to an app on there. I have to get out of it. I have to go to the ESPN app. That's one of the first complaints for people. Also, if you don't like paying the extra money for ESPN Plus, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's not that much more money, and I find uses for ESPN Plus outside of it. If you like golf, then guess what? You're going to be able to watch PGA Tour live for free. So you get that with your ESPN Plus subscription. If you love the 30 for 30s like I do, you can go back and watch any of them when you want to do it. You can go back and watch replays. You get a free MLB game every day. If you're interested in hockey, you get every single NHL game throughout the season on ESPN Plus. Like, there are so many different things that you get access to with ESPN Plus that makes it worth it, at least in my eyes. And he's right. If you have the right announcers, like K-State, like Jay Billis was on the call of the KU K-State game at Allen last year, that was on ESPN Plus. It absolutely makes it feel like a bigger event, like a real televised basketball game. But when you're throwing out some play-by-play guy that we've never heard of that's a total goober and isn't very up to speed on what he's doing and wants to talk about things outside of the Big 12 more than the actual game playing in front of him, and he's paired with Longhorn lover Lance Blanks, that does piss people off. And that's not a great announcing team. And that is what is going to frustrate people about ESPN Plus. And so people won't have a problem with ESPN Plus if you get more of that scenario. Like, it was supposed to be Shambi and Jay Billis last year. And then I think Shambi ended up having flight troubles because of weather issues when they were coming out of Texas. So only Jay Billis and Chris Budden were able to make that trip to Lawrence. And they were able to get, I think Mark Neely filled in on that. And Mark Neely does a great job. Obviously, great at covering the Big 12 and supports it in a good way and is starting to do more and more for ESPN. But I mean, the announcing crews, that is a major deal of it. And then you also have to factor into that game, like, it got ESPN level production value added to it. You have to make sure all those boxes are checked, though, or people will say this product is lesser and you're treating it like so. And that is how how ESPN has treated a lot of the Big 12 plus games. That's just going to be one of the issues that the Big 12 has to navigate. People are never going to be happy about the Big 12 now ESPN Plus situation. But if you can get ESPN to divert more legit broadcasters to those games, then they will be, it will ease up so much of the frustration and anger that people have toward that product. Now, we'll see. Now, I'm not saying that like every game needs that. And now it sucks when it's your team. So, like, if K-State is playing UCF next year in Orlando, then yes, you're probably going to be pissed off when you get a terrible announcing crew on that game. I hate to say it, but that game does not deserve an A plus, a B plus announcing crew. Like, throw your bottom of the barrel, the guys, throw them a bone. They're like, hey, how you get to call a Big 12 game? Awesome. That's fine. Throw it to them, whatever. Nobody is watching that outside of K-State fans and maybe UCF fans, but again, that's another one that I don't think they really show up or care much about basketball. So that's fine. But when you have a marquee game on ESPN Plus or two programs that are playing at a high level, give the resources to it that it deserves. ESPN realized that and did it for K-State KU last year. It's just a matter of will they start to do more of that, and will that kind of become the precedence moving forward? We shall see. But just a couple of notes from the Big 12's VP of men's college basketball. So that is your Monday version of EMAW Radio, kind of a recap and some thoughts on a lot of different things going on around K-State and how things kind of progress. I will be back here on Wednesday. We'll see what there is to talk about with K-State. I'm not sure that these are always going to be, 45 minutes to an hour, but I do want to be able to bring you guys something that you have to listen to, whether it's over a lunch break, on the drive home from work, whatever, at a pretty frequent level during the off season, because I know that it can be kind of frustrating to not have enough content to listen to or get. And if you're somebody like me, like I love podcasts. Like when I'm sitting here working, I will listen to them. When I'm driving around, I'll listen to them. So I just always like to have as much as I can. And if you don't like me, then you're not going to listen. That's totally fine. But if you do like K-State and you like me enough, then hopefully this is something that you enjoy and you're okay with killing, 50 minutes of your day, whatever it is, a drive, hanging around doing nothing, listening to me. For me, mowing the yard, that's another one. Had to mow for the first time this week. Made it much easier when I had my podcast to pop on and listen to. So all those things to kind of look forward to. And we'll have more throughout the week. So stay tuned over on EMAW Online, and I'll keep everybody on the loop with that. And we'll be back here on Wednesday. So thanks for joining you. I'm out, and we'll talk to you soon.